Hello and welcome to another video in this Airbnb Clone Ruby on Rails series. And in last video, we implemented the front-end functionality of favoriting a property. Let me log in test1@gmail.com 12356 login. Okay, refresh. So we can wishlist properties now, but if we refresh this page, it won't get saved, right? It has not been saved, and that's why we won't retain this favorites. So now we will have to add a backend functionality or yeah, backend functionality and we'll create the APIs also. So let's work on that. By the way, I did create this video like 4 hours back, but I got stuck on one issue related to CSRF token. So I'm reshooting this one single video. Uh, yeah, so that's it. Now let's focus on this. So when we favorite a particular property, there are two important things happening here. One is we are using the user, we will have to use the user ID. So user Rajat or user test1 has favorited this. We have to save that information, right? So user ID is important. At the same time, which properties they have wish listed? Uh, this particular property. So for that also we need property ID. So we'll create a wishlist table in which we will save two things: property reference and user reference, or you can say property ID and user ID. Okay, so that's one thing about the table that we are creating. Second, we will have to create two API calls here. Try to think which two API calls. One is create. So whenever we are clicking on this, sorry, clicking on this, it is creating a wishlist item, right? Wishlist row in this table. So that's one. And second, destroy or deleting the row. So we'll click on this and it will destroy the wishlist item. So we will have to create two API calls also. So now let's start with the table part first. For that, let me stop our server. Command C or Control C, clear Rails G generate model. What model do we want to create? Wish list. Yeah, wish list. We will reference user as references and also add property as references. We need only these two things. Okay, for our case, Airbnb has a much complex system, but we are keeping it simple, and at later stage we might improve this. So we'll create a table where wishlist user and the reference of user is cannot be null and foreign key is true. Correct, property is correct, and we will also index this. We will index this because we want quick results on our homepage. So adding an index does help. Index should have something like this. Add index. We'll write first table name. So which table we want to index and the name of all the columns we want to index in this particular table. So we have only two details here. So let's user ID, property ID. It's a reference. So property, what happened? And we'll mark unique true. I think that should be it. Let me cross verify if we have used it somewhere else. Add index user this. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So let's do the migration. Okay. Rails DB migrate. Clear. Let's check the schema just for safety. And we have this major changes. One is foreign key wishlist for properties and for users. User ID, property ID, created at date time, those things. Okay. And index. We added to property ID, user ID, and a combination of these two. Okay, so it looks good for us. Now we will have to create two API calls, right? So for that, we will have to write this code in Ruby and we'll have to create a controller for them. So for that, we'll go to app. Sorry. There's one important thing that I forgot, which I did mention in last couple of videos, which is whenever you are doing some migration, check out all the models which this particular migration affects. So which models this migration affects? Hint is three. So try to think of it. I'll quickly reveal the answer also. First is wishlist model. So this is the model which will get affected. Second is user because we are referencing it. And third is property. So let's open that also. Now let's go to wishlist. Belongs to user, that's good. Belongs to property, that's also correct. Now let's in property, let's write something like this. Has many wish lists and dependent destroy. So this first part means that it has many wish lists, which is correct. A property can have many users who wish list this. So that's one. And second, dependent destroy means that if this property gets deleted or destroyed, all the entry in wishlist table will also get deleted because we don't need it anymore, right? Along with that, so this wishlist will contain information related to property only, not related to user, but we need user details also. So for that, we will write has many wishlisted users. I'll explain you what this is. Wait, let me try to show it to you through association Rails. Let's open this duck labs or whatever it is. Duck type labs. Okay, got it. So there's a very simple example here, which is a user can be a part of many groups. Many users can be a part of one group and they are connected via membership. So users, groups, and they are connected via membership. Okay. So for us, it is users, properties, and they are connected via wishlist. Membership is equivalent to wishlist. So when we write has many memberships, in this user model, we can access only user related details. But if we write has many groups through memberships, so groups, where is this groups coming from? From memberships, this group. Okay, so in this case, now we can access groups also. So how will it affect the code? Now we can use user dot groups and we will get all the groups for this user. Same applies here. Group dot users will give us all the users in this particular group. So that's how it works. We'll write a bit more efficient code in our case. So through, what is our model via which this is getting controlled? Wishlist. Wishlist. Again, dependent destroy is needed. And we'll also mention source. Okay, so what it means is wishlisted users, we want wishlisted users through wishlist, through this wishlist, and the source is user. Okay, so this is a safe side code, otherwise it would have assumed user only. But if there is multiple membership, it does help a lot. So I hope this makes things clear. If we use wishlists, it will give us property related wishlist details, only single property related, this particular property. And if we use wishlisted users, it will give all the users who have wishlisted this particular property. And we can use this like something like this. I'm not fully, I'll write this out down in our front end, connecting the back end and front end part. But what we can do is this wishlisted users contain list of all the users who have bookmarked this property, right? So we will search our current user in this, and if it exists, that means we can show heart icon, and if it doesn't exist, that means we can keep it simple. So that's how it will work. And we have written this in our user. No, we haven't written this in our user code. Let's get rid of this empty space. Let's copy this, save. In user also, we'll write this, but in this case, sorry, what's happening? But in this case, we'll write wishlisted properties. Through wishlist, source will be property and dependent will be destroyed. Uh, Dependents destroy, yeah. So if this user gets destroyed, all the wishlist for that particular user will get destroyed. So where will we use this? When we will implement this page for wishlist, we have to show all the properties this user is wishlisted, right? So for this particular user, it is an instance of a user. For this particular user, we'll get all the wishlisted properties. It will make our code much more easier. Sorry. So I hope it is clear. If it is not clear, go through this article and read it. It is actually pretty simple and quite short also. So let's get rid of this. Close the server, stop the server. Let's clear. So we have migrated our database. We went through all the modules this migration affects. Now let's go to our API part. Okay, our database part is ready. For API, we need to create Ruby controller, and that too in our API folder. This might not exist for you, so just create a new folder here by right click new folder and name it as API. You can keep your controller directly inside controller folder also, but this is a special controller. We want this only for API purposes and not for anything else, and that's why we are keeping it here. I'll create a file, name it as wishlists controller.rb. It will be part of module API. Okay, class wishlist, multiple wishlists controller. I think naming has not been that good for this. Anyways, application controller. And now there are mainly four types of operation that happens on a database. Generally, we can like broadly categorize this. What are those four operations? Create, read, update, delete. We'll get rid of read, so we won't implement read because we'll do that via our model directly. Okay, so we don't need API for that. Okay, we don't need update also because this table, wishlist table, contains only two things: user ID, property ID, right? Now, if you update any one of this, it's a completely different thing. It, if you update user ID, it is talking about completely different user. If you update property ID, it is talking about completely different property. So update is not required here. Okay. So we'll get rid of update also. And we will need create and delete only. And again, to iterate this, let me start the server first. Bin dev. Let's refresh. Again, when we click on this, it is calling the create API. This create will get called. And we again click on this, delete is getting called, or destroy. We'll use destroy. So let's write new, it's a definition of create and definition of destroy and. Okay. We'll implement this shortly, but let's go into routes now. So I'll open a new tab for this particular folder only, Rails routes. Now it has a lot of routes, but let's start from top. There are a lot of users routes, and they mainly handle our sign up, sign in, forgot password, registration, those kind of things. Okay, sign out, those kind of things. And it was implemented by device, not by us. Then we have a route, which corresponds to our home page index. Let me expand this further. Okay, no worries. And then there are some default routes that Ruby on Rails create. Now we'll create another route under namespace of API. So let's go to our config, routes, namespace, API, do, wait, using namespace in Rails routes. It will just keep our code a bit, uh, you can say that it remains a bit tied to what it is supposed to do. But if we want, we can avoid using namespace and we can keep it outside API also. So namespace this path we won't mention. This should be a reference of this and do end. And we can mention resources. Let's mention wish lists. Okay. So what this will do, I'll just show you. This is not the correct code, but let me show you to you. Rails routes. And this will add some more routes for us, which are this API wishlists, API wishlist, those kind of things, and delete, put, patch these. But let me make it much more clear. -c wishlist. So you see, there are multiple APIs multiple endpoints automatically created when we use resources wishlist. It will create all the default uh, endpoints that it can create, which are defined in Rails. But we'll restrict it to only two, which are create and destroy. So for that, we'll use only array, which one? Create and destroy. So now let's do this again. Rails routes wishlist, and we'll see two API calls. One is a post API call on this API, and it is calling our API folder wishlists controller create definition. This is a delete API slash wishlist and the wishlist ID, the table ID from wishlist, API slash wishlist slash destroy. Okay, so yeah, now we just have to implement the logic here. What will be the logic? Whenever we are creating the API, creating a wishlist item in our table, we will need user ID, property ID, save to table, and finally return response to API call. So whatever is called this particular API create, we'll have to send them a response, right? So similar to that, for destroy, what all things we'll need? We'll need ID, which is a wishlist ID. We don't need property ID and user ID for this. If we had that, we can use that also. But for our case, ID will work. Save it to table, or basically delete from table and return response to API call. Okay, I hope this makes sense, this pseudocode. So for user ID and property ID, whenever we make a API call, we will need user ID and property ID in that API call. And same happens with destroy also. We will need ID or wishlist ID in that API call. So all those information get saved to params. Okay, so we will create a private function. Whatever we write below private keyword, all these functions will be automatically private. Wish list params, and this is a pretty standard Rails code. You can say that this is a convention that various developers follow. As I mentioned, it will be part of params, but params can have anything, right? But we'll have to permit only two things, which is user ID, property, sorry. There is a typo. As I mentioned that params can contain any information that we want to send, right? But as a developer, I might have written something wrong, but I want only user ID and property ID. So that's why we are adding this check that allow only these two things. Now, if we have these two things, we can use wishlist param, which is equivalent to params for our case. So let's use this. We have user ID and property ID where in wishlist param. Now save it to table. So let's save it to table, which is wishlist. Model is connected to wishlist in our MVC framework for Rails. Dot create. We have to use user ID and property ID. So therefore we can use wishlist params. We can save it as wishlist. We can get this instance, get this record in wishlist. Now we have to, so first part is done from this wishlist params. Second part is done from this. Now we have to return response to API call, right? We have to return the response. So for that we can use respond to. There are various ways in which we can return our response, but we'll write respond to do format and we'll send it in JSON format, right? So format.json do and let's render. Now in this render is a very good thing. We can render pages, we can render a specific string, we can render anything. But here we will render JSON information, which our front end will use to decide what it wants to show on the page. So basically we are sending information to our browser or our API call or our front end. But in front end we will control it and show whatever we want to. So send render JSON wishlist dot to JSON and we will have to send status. Okay. Okay. Similar to this, we can use for destroy also. So in destroy we need ID. We don't need this wishlist params because that doesn't have a ID, wishlist ID, right? So here we can use wishlist dot destroy params and it contains various keys, but one of them will be ID if you make our API call correctly. Sorry, this is incorrect. This code is incorrect. You'll have to find it first, if it exists or not. Now we can destroy it. Sorry. Now we can destroy it. And again, we will have to render a response. So let's copy this, paste this. This should not be this. And we cannot send this because if the item has been deleted, sending that information back doesn't make sense. So let's remove this and we can use 204, I think. Status 204. There are various status calls in any API call. So 204 is no content success response. Yeah. So our API call is successful, but we don't want to we don't have any data associated with it, right? I think it should be like this. We will check this, no worries. So I hope this is clear why we have used create and destroy. And we do have our get status. Yeah. Bin slash dev. Let's try it out if it works. Let's try create. So for that, first I'll open Rails C. Let's go to our wish list and see how many entries do we have. We have 0 entries right now. Let's go to, let's clear this. No, not clear. Exit this. Now clear. I'm using Postman to make an API call. If you want to make an API call, we'll have to see using Rails routes dash C wishlist that if you want to add an entry, what is the path? API slash wishlists, right? API slash wishlist. If we call this API call in post, it will go to our API folder wishlist and create. And we already know if we it goes to create, it will add it to say database and it will send that information to front end. And in front end, we'll catch this information and change our button to filled heart or red color heart. That's how the entire system works. If you want me to explain this in much more depth, do let me know. Otherwise, I think it should be easy to understand. Slash API wishlist. If you are using, you don't have to do this Postman API call. I'm just doing this to check something. Check our API call. And if you still want to do this, go to headers, use this except application JSON. Okay. Now in body, I'll use two things. User ID, which is one. I'm mentioning this as one, and property ID should also be one. Let's try this out. 422 unprocessable entity preview action controller invalid authenticity token. Yeah, so this is the issue I had earlier and I got stuck on this, but we can bypass this. Bypass CSRF token authenticity rails. And there was no, I'm not sure. Sorry. Basically, any API call needs in Rails by default needs a CSRF token, correct CSRF token. Because our front end is different, sorry, our browser is different and this Postman is different, it is unable to match or find correct CSRF token. So we can use this with exception. By default, Rails applies CSRF protection to all controllers that subclass from. Okay. So by default, it is applied. So if we use this, it won't get applied. So we'll go to our controller, wishlist controller, and above this, I'll just add this. Now let's try to resend, and it says ID. It has created one ID. User ID is one. Property ID is one. Created it and updated it. Now let's create another entry for, yeah, 2. Send. Again, ID 2, which is a wishlist ID. Let's try 5 also. And you can see now we should have 3 entries in our database. So let's go to our Rails console, wishlist dot, what should I write? Count. It has 3 items. Now let's try to remove one of these. We'll remove, it has ID 1, 2, and 3, right? So we'll remove 2. For that, I'll unselect these ID 2. It should be a delete, and I think no route matches with API wishlist. Okay. Slash ID. We'll have to mention ID also. Slash 2. I think, yeah. I think so. I have unchecked this. Let's try this out. Template is missing. Oh, even if template is missing, I've opened another tab, Rails C wishlist.count, and we have two entries. So it is just saying that we have to render it correctly on the front end part. So maybe it does need some details here, maybe null or something. I'm not fully sure yet. That I'll figure it out. Uh, but this part was successful, and that's why it did destroy. If you want, I can log this wishlist dot all, and you can see one which has property ID 11 and three which has property ID 15. We had added 1 and 2 also, user ID 1, property ID 2, but we have deleted it right now. We can delete this one also. Let's try this out also. 1 and wishlist.all. Now we have only one entry. Count 1. So you see both our API calls are successful. So understand this point. In front end, now we can control the hide and show. In backend, we have our API calls. We have to connect these two things, which we can do in JavaScript easily, right? So yeah, I think this I will do in next video. Let me check. Yeah, I will do this in next video. It is already 31 minutes. I have gone in too much depth. And I hope this makes sense. If there are any questions, do let me know in comments. And if you appreciate this much depth on these videos, do mention this in comments so that in future videos, I'll keep this much information in my videos. Otherwise, I'll trim them down. Do let me know what you prefer. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.